And I thought we would do just a quick little review of anatomy. I brought Daryl this morning. He was wide awake and ready to come and help out. So if you want to come up, come up. If you want to stay where you are, that's fine too. You know what? I wonder, might be helpful to put Daryl on the table. That's what we look like. That's what we look like. Well, maybe not in color. But yeah, so if you can't see and you want to come up, come on up. Don't be shy. Everybody don't rush me. Right? Okay. So last week we were talking, okay, I'm going to turn this around a little bit. Okay. So y'all can see your spine. So this is the, he does in my dining room. Or my husband loves it. Yes. So this is the bottom of your head. So Daryl's a little incomplete. Right? So there's parts of Daryl that are missing. So this is the bottom of your skull, and then this is where your spine starts here, right? So this is your cervical spine. So if you just kind of put your hand up here, turn your head a little bit, that's all the pink stuff, right? Cervical spine. So those are your cervical vertebrae. Something interesting, if you take your hand, go down the part of your neck, and you'll feel like the biggest bump. Everybody feel the biggest bump? That's the transition bump. That's your last cervical vertebrae. Isn't that interesting? That's where this part of your spine starts, right? And this is called your thoracic spine or your T-spine. The way I think about it is if you put your arms out to the sides, you get your spine in the middle, it forms a T, right? Your T-spine starts right there where your arms come out. So if Daryl had arms, they would be right there, right? So you got the cervical spine, you got your thoracic or your T-spine, and then we have the lumbar spine. That's the low back. That's the trying to stand up and, oh, yeah, that's it. That's the, that's that part of the spine, right? So I wanted to focus mostly on the lower part of the spine today because we've been doing some work with the hips and movement of the hips, and so I wanted to kind of explain how this articulates a little bit. So you can see the lumbar vertebrae come down here, right? And then I've been talking about the hip bones, these two bones on either side. They look like elephant ears. You know, I've been talking about that. So this is your, let me turn it to the correct way so you can see. So this is your, I'm going to go, Daryl and I are going to be mirroring you. This is your left ilium. That's your hip bone on the left side and your hip bone on the right side. Actually, it's just the opposite, right? Because I'm mirroring you. Okay, so you've got one bone on either side, and then they're joined in the middle. So if you take your fingers where your belly button is and kind of walk your fingers down till you feel the hardness of your pubic symphysis, that's right there. That's actually where your hip bones join in the front. Kind of interesting, right? So you get this kind of three-dimensional view. So the important part that and I left out a part of the spine for crying out loud. So sacrum, a lumbar spine, and then sacrum, right? So this is what we were talking about last week in terms of how the spine articulates with the hip bones, right? So you got the right hip bone and the left hip bone, and then you've got your sacrum that sits right in between. So if you take your hand and place it with the fingers facing down so that your middle finger is right above the crevice of your buttocks, right? That's just about your sacrum. Your sacrum and your hand are about the same size, just about the same size. So there's a joint here on this side and that side of the sacrum that connect to the pelvis. So when we are moving our spines, when we're moving our pelvis, we're actually moving this whole section of our hips, right? So when we were working last week and I had you rotating the hips forward and backward, and you remember I said to find, okay, Daryl, don't fall over, to find the hip bones. So if you take your hands and find the hip bones, here's Daryl's hip bones right there, right? That's his waist. And that's the hip bones. So find your hip bones right there. We'll do just a little bit of this movement with Daryl this morning. So with the hands here, when we roll forward, and Daryl is real skinny, so I'm going to go forward like that, right? So you can roll forward and backward, right? So that looks like this. Forward is arching your back, and backward is flattening your back. So can you do that a few times? right? So as you're doing that, take a few breaths. But what I want you to visualize while you're doing that, you keep doing that. As you're moving forward and back, you're moving these joints in here between your spine and your hips, which is really important. There needs to be some movement in there so that when you're walking, when you're bending, when you're twisting, you don't have like this really rigid spine. You have the ability to move and you have the resilience in this part of your low back. Does that make sense? All right. Was this helpful? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Yep. So male pelvic bones, and this, Daryl is a male. So um, Daryl's pelvic bones are a little bit taller and a little bit narrower. And female pelvic bones in general are a little bit shorter and a little bit wider, and that's because women carry babies, right? So they need to be able to spread those pelvic bones a little bit when they're delivering, when they're carrying. So the thing with men is there's often a little less space between the lower ribs. So the lower ribs would be right about here. So that's the bottom of the T-spine. The blue is the T-spine, so the lower ribs would be right about there. That's an awful lot of space. Yeah, I don't think Daryl's quite to scale, but pretty close, pretty close. Yeah, so did that address what you were thinking? Yes, it's an opening joint. So this pubic symphysis, so I don't know if you all can see this, but you got the bone on the right and the bone on the left, and in between, there's like this little cartilage thing in here. Can you all see that? Yeah. So that, and when a woman is carrying, when a woman is giving birth, that it will actually expand to allow that to happen. Yeah. Thank you. I didn't know we were going to have that kind of talk today. Didn't prepare for that. It's a little different conversation. All right. Right. We're not doing yoga for that. Wrong group. So I'm going to slide Daryl over here, but I'm going to leave him up. Bye, Daryl. Any questions? Any comments or observations? You all know your anatomy now. So eventually I'm looking for a rib cage. So it's good to, instead of buying one, I'm always like asking friends, do you have a spare rib cage hanging around? Got a couple of leg bones I could borrow. So when I get more bones, I'll bring them in and kind of show you. I think it's important to know this stuff, right? Because we don't realize that, you got to hold your spine really stiff and straight and got to sit up really straight. Well, you can see this is anything but straight. We're not supposed to be straight. We're supposed to be curved like this. And especially with that lumbar curve, because many of us have had or will have back pain at some point, right? And so the tendency is to guard that, to really like kind of walk stiff. So somebody with back pain, starts to walk like this, right? You recognize this. Yeah. And so what's happening is there's no articulation in those joints there. So that gets stiffer and stiffer, right? So instead, we need to find places where we can move. Even if we are having an issue with our low back, there are certain movements we can do that aren't going to cause pain. So exploring those areas of non-pain helps us realize that we do have movement there, and then we can allow that to expand as the pain kind of subsides. All right, so we're going to dive into the pelvis a little more today, I think. So first, let's start with some breathing, though. All right, so feet on the floor or on your blocks or wherever they are. If you have shoes on and you can take them off, I really encourage that. Lift up your toes, spread them wide. Even if you've got your socks on, that's okay. Socks give you just a little bit of resistance. And then just notice what it feels like to have the soles of your feet on the floor. And you might want to close your eyes. So if you can close your eyes, that'll bring your attention inside your own body. And what does it feel like for the feet to be on the floor? Can you feel your heels? And can you feel the outer edges and the balls of your feet and the bottoms of your toes? And when you come to the arches in the middle of the foot, in the center and the inside of the foot, what do the arches feel like? Are your arches in contact with the floor, or are they lifted from the floor? Is one foot different than the other? Are you not even aware of your arches? So there's lots of different things. So again, this is just sort of an inquiry as to what's going on in the feet and what does it feel like, and what happens if you press down a little bit into your feet. Are you pressing down evenly, or is there more weight going into your heels or into the balls of your feet or into the outer edges, maybe the inner edges? Is there space between your toes as you press down, or does that space change? And as you press down into your feet, what do you feel in your legs? Your lower legs, your knees, your thighs even. And as you're paying attention to all of this stuff that's going on from the feet up into the legs, where is your breath? Can you notice it, or is it gotten really shallow? And now draw your attention to your sitting bones. That's the bottom of your hip bones where they're on the chair. And are you on the back of your sitting bones? In other words, are you sitting like on your gluteal muscles, on your bum? If you're sitting on your bum, see if you can come forward a little bit and move that out of the way so you can feel the sitting bones. Oftentimes, what pulls on the low back is sitting on those gluteal muscles and kind of pinning them, and that pulls down on the low back. So can you press down into your sitting bones and notice what's there? Is it even, right and left, or do you have a little more weight on one side or the other? And as you press into your sitting bones, what happens if you pull your navel in just a little bit? So you don't have to really stiffen the belly, but just kind of pull it in a little bit and notice what you feel in your hips, what you notice in your back. And then notice that low back. If you slump a little bit as you're sitting, can you feel the rounding, the unnatural rounding in your low back? And then if you sit up a little bit taller without creating a whole lot of tension in your body, just sit up a little bit taller. See if you can feel that natural curve in the lumbar spine. Breathing in and breathing out. And as you continue to inhale, exhale, feeling the bottoms of your feet, feeling your sitting bones, I'm going to ask you to just gently begin to rock your pelvis forward and back. So it's like you're tucking your tailbone under a little bit, and then you're lifting your tailbone. So again, if you do this with your eyes closed, that'll help with distractions, right? Because it's easy to get distracted with your eyes open. So just gently rolling to the front of your sitting bones and the back of your sitting bones. Or as we talked about last week, tipping the pelvis forward and backward. And you can make this a very small movement, or you can make this a rather large movement, depending on what you've got going on in your body. So if you're having a low back issue and it doesn't feel good to really go through the whole range, just move a little bit front to back. Just a couple more of these. And then come back to that neutral pelvis. And again, pressing down into your feet a little bit. Breathing in and breathing out, watching the air as it moves in and out. Bottoms of the feet are in contact with the floor, so all the toes are pressing down into the floor a little bit here. Press down into your sitting bones. And then without lifting your sitting bones from the chair, or your buttocks, your butt cheeks from the chair, without lifting them from the chair, take your right hip a little closer to your rib cage and then lower that down. And then take your left hip a little closer to your rib cage and then lower that down. So right now we're just lifting from side to side. If you remember, if you don't remember, you can open one eye and have a look at Daryl up here. So the pelvis on the left and the pelvis on the right, what we're doing is just lifting one side, and then we're lifting the other side. And we're not letting the buttocks come up off the chair. Not letting the buttocks come up off the chair. Breathing in, breathing out, eyes closed. What do you feel? Is it different than moving forward and backward? And then explore that forward and backward movement again. So extending and flexing the spine, rolling to the front or the back of the sitting bones. And then do that little side to side movement again. Again, breathing in, breathing out, just noticing. This is very subtle movement inside the body. And then come back to a neutral position. So you're simply sitting with the sitting bones even on the chair. Notice your awareness of how you're sitting on the chair right now. Take a couple more breaths. And then you can let your eyes gently open. So I want to do a quick check-in about that little exercise that we did. So what was your awareness of your sitting bones, the very first awareness? What was your awareness of your sitting bones on the chair? Were they even? Or were you sitting more on one side or the other? Even? Okay. Anybody sitting more on one side than the other? Yeah, yeah. It's a good thing to notice, right? It's like, oh, I don't think about that. And what's that? They're very flexible, yes. So as we got into the movement part of it, right? So as we started to tip the hips forward and back, you remember that, those who were here last week, remember that movement that we were doing forward and back, right? And you could feel the flexibility in that part of your body. It's like, oh, there's a little more movement there. And then the side to side. What did that feel like, moving side to side, without, you know, leaning your whole body, but just that really subtle, that really subtle shift of lifting this sitting bone up and then that sitting bone up. And again, if Daryl had ribs, it would be right there. So we're bringing the hip toward the rib and then away from the rib, right? So how was that movement, that side to side movement, compared to the forward and back movement? Harder. Yeah, a little harder, right? There's a little more musculature on the sides that prevent us from doing that kind of movement as big as we can do this way. But were you able to feel that after doing that for a while? Yeah. So you can see, you could sense that there's a lot of flexibility, a lot of mobility in that part of your body. And again, when we have pain, when we get into an issue with a low back pain or hip pain or something of that nature, the tendency is to guard that, just to just tuck everything in and not allow any kind of movement in there. And at some point we'll explore this a little bit more, but I'll just say this about that. When you guard in your hips, when you guard in this part of your body, that affects your breathing, which is up here, right? When you do that, you are stunting your ability to take a full deep breath. And when you can't take a full deep breath, the anxiety level comes up. When the anxiety level comes up, everything that hurts way more, right? So all of this kind of movement, this ability to feel and to sense, and that's why I had you keep your eyes closed, because it's really easy to get distracted from these very subtle movements, but with your eyes closed, you can really get a sense of what's happening in your body. It's that subtle movement that allows the breath to come in and expand us. All right, so we'll do a little bit more work for the spine, and particularly in the low back. And again, if you're dealing with, if you're experiencing a low back issue right now, you've got some pain or discomfort, I want you to just work within your region of comfort. And that might be really tiny, tiny movements. It might not even be movement at all. It might be simply closing your eyes and visualizing your body moving that way, because that can start to get you into a place of movement inside of the or outside of pain. Okay, All right, so get your feet a little wider than your hips. All right. And then let's do that rocking forward and back movement that we just did. Let's see if we can get it a little bit bigger, right? So we're rolling the pelvis forward. If you want to put your hands on your pelvis, it's right here. These are the pelvic bones. So we're just rocking the bones forward and back and forward and back. All right. You broke the pelvis, yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's very painful there. Yes. There's a lot of blood supply in that part of the body, right? And that's the foundation. So yeah, you can't do anything. Right. I'm sorry for that, but I'm glad you're here. Good. So so just rock so rocking forward and back, right? Okay. And then come into that extension with your pelvis, right? So we're bringing the pelvis forward, right? And now bring your shoulder blades together, back and down. Bring your elbows behind you, right? So we're really really expanding through the chest and opening up through the front of the body. And then we're going to rock back and bring your elbows forward. So we're really rounding. So if you have your hands on your hips, that anchors your hands, and your elbows are like the little ends of your wings, right? So we're just going back and forth. So we're doing like this little flying thing here. So breathing in and breathing out. So if you're not breathing in as you expand and open through the front, I'm going to invite you to do that now, taking a nice deep breath in as you expand and a nice full breath out as you round. Good. So you want to go really slowly so that you get the fullness of your breath as it moves in and out. Great. Okay, just a couple more. Excellent. And then coming back to sort of that neutral position. Take your hands down to your thighs and drop your chin to your chest, and then where the collarbones come together, the little notch between your collarbones, see if you can pull your chin back into that little notch. And as you pull your chin into that little notch, press down into your sitting bones and lengthen your spine. And then relax all of that. Let your head come back to a neutral position. So this is the movement we're going to do. We're going to tuck the chin in toward the collarbones, the little notch. I'll move sideways so you can see. So we're tucking the chin into the collarbones. And then as we do that, we're pressing down into the spine. So we're creating a little more length from the tailbone to the back of the head. And then relaxing that. So we'll do that a few more times, right? So again, very subtle movement. If you want to close your eyes, you'll be able to sense this a little bit easier. Now for me, it feels more natural to inhale when I tuck my chin in toward my collarbones and lengthen my spine, and then to exhale when I let that go. You might find it the opposite. You might find it more natural to inhale when you let go into your neutral position, and to exhale when you tuck your chin in and lengthen your spine. Couple more. So right now we're just stretching a little bit through the muscles that connect the spine in the back of the body. So there are muscles that run all the way down the back of your spine. And then come back to that sort of neutral position. Take a moment, just notice what you feel in the back of your body. And then let your eyes open. Good. Okay. So we're going to do a little side-to-side movement. So the side-to-side movement, if we can think about the spine, how flexible is this, I wonder? Let's see. Oop, have a seat. Okay, so we're going to flex the spine this way and that way. He's pretty flexible, right? So we're going this way and that way. So you can see that there's movement in the spine. When we get down to this area, we're not moving so much, right? It's kind of from the hips up. So think about moving your spine side to side in this direction. And if it's helpful, I think sometimes just having this visual is really helpful, right? So you can see that movement from side to side. So let's do a little breathing as we do that as well. Now the side to side movement by itself is fine. If you want to get a little more movement in here, you can Bring the arm up and stretch over. Now we're working on muscles in the arms and the shoulders and the ribs, the waist, down into the hips. But I want you to really focus on what's happening in your spine, right? So as you move to the right, the left side of your spine is opening up and stretching, and the right side of your spine is compressing a little bit. As you move to the left, the right side of your spine is opening up, and the left side of your spine is compressing, right? So it's good to have this kind of movement. These are daily movements I would really encourage you to do every day, a couple times a day if you can, right? So the rocking back and forth with your hips and the side to side. Good. And last time. Excellent. And then come all the way back. So let's just take a moment, maybe close your eyes and notice again. Go way inside your body. See if you can get a sense in the center of your body where your spine is, what that feels like. And then you can let your eyes open. So did anybody notice a difference moving from one side to the other? Yeah. We're more flexible moving in one direction, a little less flexible moving in the other direction. And did anybody notice that as you were moving from side to side, maybe the sitting bone was trying to come up off the chair? Yeah, right? Yeah. Because we get to those places where it's a little sticky. That's kind of a word I like to, when I think about how I get so far and then I can't go any farther, it gets a little bit sticky, so I'll just move my whole body to get there, right? Because we compensate and we don't realize that we're compensating. So let's try making this just a little more challenging for the spine. Bring your feet a little bit wider. So you got, I'm going to say like maybe the width of the chair, maybe just a tiny bit more, depending on how tall you are. If you're a really small person, then maybe not quite that far. And so pressing those sitting bones into the chair and sitting up nice and tall, breathing in, breathing out. See if you can bring both arms up overhead. We're going to do like a little rainbow movement. Now, if you can't get both arms up overhead, if you've only got one arm that will go up there, just put the other one wherever it'll go. If you got one hand maybe on the shoulder. So thinking about a rainbow movement, we're going to go from side to side. So it's like a big rainbow, right? Rainbow to the left and rainbow to the right. Ah. And now you'll really notice, oh, when I go to this side, that sitting bone really wants to come up. When I go to the other side, oh, I can really feel that in this part of my body. And are you able to breathe as you're doing this, right? Yeah. So do it in a way that doesn't encourage you holding your breath. Do it in a way that encourages you to use your breath. So just a couple more of these rainbows. Gonna feel like I'm at a concert. Everybody's like, woo. It's Rainbow Day, yeah. How about one more time on each side? Ah, good. All right, and then come back up and let your hands come back down to your lap. Close your eyes again. Taking a couple of breaths in and out. Now again, just notice. So I'm sure there's a lot going on in the muscles in the sides of your body, but I want you to go inside and see if you can visualize your spine again. And what that might have looked like, that movement, what that might have looked like to your spine. Maybe it was a little different than when we were just doing one side with one arm up and then the other side. And then you can let your eyes gently open. What did you notice about doing that two-handed as opposed to one-handed? More stretch. Yeah, more stretch. Both arms up overhead. Lungs opened up. Breathing changed, right? Yeah, breathing changed. Some people held their breath a little more, right? Some people were like, oh yeah, I can do a little bit more breathing. Excellent. What else did you notice? Oh, Ellen noticed a difference from one side to the other, right? Yeah. Sometimes we compensate, like I said, sometimes we compensate in different ways, but when we do movements, the more complex the movement, this is a much more complex movement than this, right? So we get more joints involved, we get more body parts involved, it changes how we experience that. Anything else? Okay. Oh, yeah. You had a stop. Oh, so when you went into that side, yeah, and that's quite, yes. So Mimi said she felt like she had a stop, right? So you got to a certain spot and it was like, nope, I'm not going any farther than that. And it wasn't about the hip coming up, it was about a hard stop. So your ribs are actually very close to to the top of your pelvis bone. Like I say, this is really not representative. So take your fingers and very gently, because you have these last ribs are floating ribs, right? So very gently kind of go down until you feel where the ribs end, right on the side. Yeah. And then just walk your fingers down a tiny bit. For most of us, it's going to be like an inch or two. You're going to feel the top of your hip bones. Yeah. So in Mimi's case, maybe she had enough flexibility to go to that side, but the rib cage was actually getting stopped by the top of the pelvis, that you couldn't go so far over to the side. Interesting, huh? Yeah. So next time you're going to like bend over really fast, think about how little space you might actually have to do that. Did you say something, John? Got a lot of ribs. You do have a lot of ribs. Yeah. And it's a good thing, too. Yes. All right. So another movement for the spine is rotation, right? So we got the fronted back thing, we got the side to side thing, and then I don't think, yeah, Daryl isn't going to rotate. He's already got a herniated disc here somewhere. Yeah, he's got a little herniation there, so I don't want to make it any worse. But Daryl has all kinds of issues, right? So it's the rotation. It's the movement that we do in this direction. Now there's a slight rotation here. So I'm not trying to say that your spine is actually twisting this much, because that would be really bad. So it's not that, but you do have some rotation there. What's twisting is your rib cage around your hips. It's the muscles and the organs around there. But you have to have that ability, that resilience in all of the spine here, especially down in this area where the sacrum is, in order to do that twisting, okay? So let's just try this with your feet a little wider than your hips. We'll just try twisting. Plant your sitting bones first on the chair, right? So make sure your sitting bones are planted. Because remember, that's the part that doesn't move, right? That's the part of, those are your hips, that's not your spine. So we're just going to start by twisting a little from side to side. So don't let your sitting bones slide on the chair. If you find that your bum is sliding forward on one side or the other, okay, just notice what that feels like. If you're getting dizzy turning, you can keep your head facing forward, right? Okay. And now take your hands off your lap and see if you can create a little bit more of a twist here. Breathing in, breathing out, right? We're doing the twist. We're doing the twist. And then bring your arms way out, so extend them. Oh, and be very careful if you've got a neighbor that's close. You got short arms, good. We tried to line you up short and long arms. Good. Okay, so there's just this kind of twisting movement. And then come back, okay? And then take your right hand and place it over on your left knee, and then twist as far as you can to the left. So you can feel that from the sacrum all the way up. Breathe in, breathe out. And then undo that, come back to center, take your other hand, place it on the opposite, and again, we're just going to twist in that direction. Breathe in, breathe out. Several times, not just once. And then let's go back through center and over to that first side again. So we're just twisting, twisting, twisting. And back to the opposite side just one more time. Twisting, twisting, twisting. Good. And then coming back to center, hands on your lap, close your eyes again. Yeah, that was great. Take a breath in, let that out with a sigh. That's a good one. And just notice, if you can, go back into that image or feeling or sensation of your spine and notice what's going on there. So as you twist from side to side, as you twisted from side to side, what was happening in there? And then you can let your eyes open. Any observations about the twisting part? Yeah. Yeah. Could anybody else twist further to the left than to the right? Yeah. Just a couple. Interesting. Try that again. So twist to your left and then twist to your right. And again, try it again. I'm leading you. And to the right. Okay. Now, how many could twist farther to the left? We should be able to twist farther to the left. There's less organs over there. Less organs over here, right? On the right side, you have your liver, you have your gallbladder. Over here, you kind of have your spleen that's tucked way back. So it's a lot easier. Try that again now that you know. Try that again. Twist to the left. Now, this does not include anybody who's got an issue with tightness in the muscles, right? So we might have some tightness in the muscles that would prevent that. But all things being equal. Okay, that's going to be your homework for the next week, is to test that out. So yes, so again, all things being equal with muscle tension, it's going to be easier to twist to the left. That's good. Yeah, yes, it does feel good, right? Yeah, it's like the thing about doing these very subtle exercises with a focus on the spine is that for me anyway, it feels like wringing out the sponge. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, all this stuff, because maybe I don't move in quite that intense or complete a fashion, right? So I'm going to turn, but I'm going to turn and talk to the person behind me. I'm just going to turn like this, as opposed to twisting like this, right? So I'm not getting that completeness of it. What else did you notice about twisting? Your neck is stiff. You noticed a stiffness in your neck. Yeah, right? Right. Maybe you don't have that range of motion, but you've gradually lost that range of motion, so you just kind of operate within the safety thing. And again, if you need to talk to somebody behind you, instead of turning your head, you'll turn your whole body. So we make those kinds of accommodations. Good. Anything else that you noticed about twisting? On the right. That's a pretty teeny thing, but your liver's huge. What? I'm sorry, ask the question again? You didn't feel a difference. Yeah, and you might not, because again, it's if we could strip away all the tension that we hold in our muscles, so all things being equal, we should be able to twist to the left easier, right? So, but with muscle tension, so we might have muscle tension in a certain way, that's going to prevent us from being able to twist in that fashion. Think about like what side you sleep on. Think about how you move your body, what foot you put forward on the stairs. That creates certain tensions in the body. Not a bad thing. I mean, we need certain tensions in the body, but that creates certain tensions in the body. Yeah. So keep working on that, though. I want to see what happens next week when y'all come back in. All right. So we just did, you might not have noticed this, but we just did the 6 movements of the spine. Right? So you folks who've been studying yoga for a while, you know the 6 movements of the spine, right? Yeah, forward flexion, extension, side movement, and twisting. We just did all that, but we did it with a focus on what's happening at the spine itself, right? And of course, Daryl's missing all the other parts. This is just the spine part, but you've got the ribs that come out. That blue part, that's all ribs. That's where all the ribs connect, is in the T-spine, right? And then you've got muscles that connect all of that. So there's a whole lot of other things going on. All right. So let's go. We're going to keep in line with the movement in the pelvis and the hips. So we've done a lot of movement up here where it articulates with the spine, but there's another part of the hips. And for anybody who's had a hip replacement, it's not up here; it's down here. So see, Daryl doesn't have all of his legs, but this is the top part of his legs. So can you see how his leg bones are moving, right? So that's the top of your thigh. Top of your thigh, right there. This is how it moves. It's a ball and socket, right? Moves in that direction. Now there is some movement. He doesn't have this just because of the way the skeleton is put together. He's got screws in there. So the movement at that part of the body is up and back, right? Up and back. And then it's rotating this way and that way. So you all can do that. So if you rotate in and out. And then it would be this way and this way, right? Yeah, so there's all those movements. And even in a hip replacement, you have all of those movements because they don't screw you together quite like that. All right, So let's explore a little bit of that. If you want to sit over onto the right side of your chair. Good. Okay. So let's just start with this movement in and out, right? So the knee goes in and then the knee comes, or the knee goes out and then it comes in, right? So again, just bringing your focus to what's happening up in the hip, right? So what's happening up here, not at your knee. Now you might notice it's tight or it's comfortable or going in feels easier or going out feels easier. Breathe in and out as you're doing that. Good. Okay. And then let that movement go. And then we're going to do a little rotational movement. So circling the leg up and around if you need to sit a little differently on your chair. So kind of go up and around. Breathe in, breathe out. So again, just noticing the movement way up here where the leg bone comes into the hip socket, right? So nice and slow. And then reverse direction, because we all have a way we like to go, we kind of prefer, right? So kind of moving that up and around. And just noticing what you feel again in the joint, right? And then put that foot back down. Come back to the center of your chair. Take a moment and just kind of notice. What do you feel right side, left side? All right, and then let's see if we can take the right ankle and cross it on top of the left knee. Now that's a little complex movement as well. I don't think so. It's kind of a movement forward. So it's a movement forward, and then it's a rotation. So the movements that we just did, right? That's a more complex movement coming up and then rotating out a little bit. So with the ankle on top of the leg there, let's see if we can lift and lower the knee. So I'm going to ask y'all to sit up tall, right? And lifting the knee might be easier than lowering the knee. And if it's really challenging, take your hand and just give it a little assist, right? So kind of lift that knee up a little bit. And again, there's a lot of things probably happening in the thigh and in the back and in the knee and the leg and all the muscles that are going on there, but I really want you to focus on what's happening at the joint, what's going here. If your leg is crossed down here, ankle over ankle, that's fine. You're still getting this same movement, right? So you're pulling the knee up and then pulling the knee down. And we're getting that movement in the hip joint. So what happens if you can breathe into that? So if you don't have a lot of movement, if you've got some pain there, if you've got some restriction there, what happens if you just breathe into the space that you can move? And again, if you close your eyes, that's going to bring your awareness into that inner part of your body as opposed to everything outside. So with your eyes closed, you can feel more. Breathing in and breathing out. Good, and then uncross that leg and bring the foot back down to the floor. Let your hands rest on your lap and close your eyes for a moment. Breathing in, breathing out. Notice what you feel on that right side. And again, it's more than the leg or the knee. It's really about what's happening where that leg bone comes into the hip socket. Good, and then let your eyes open. Let's come over to the other side. So just kind of scoot over a little bit to the left side of the chair, and then we'll just drop that leg in and out. And again, so we're getting this rotation. And if you want, you can put your hand right up here where the top of the leg bone is, right? So you can feel that kind of moving in and moving out. You can feel that underneath your hands. Good. Okay, and then at some point we'll start that rotation. So just really slowly. So again, this is just an exploration of the movement that's available in that hip joint. Now, if this hip is not your original parts, it might be a little different. It might feel a little different. It might feel better. It might feel the same. It might feel more restricted, less restricted, depending on what you have going on the other hip. Yeah. And then at some point, reverse that up so you go the other way. Good. Yeah, excellent. And then kind of slide back to the center of your chair, and then let's cross that ankle, that left ankle, on top of the right leg. And if that doesn't work, ankle on ankle is fine. So test yourself a little bit. Now, if you cross your leg here and you find that your back is doing this, that just might be a little too much. So you want to make sure you're sitting up nice and tall. You're able to sit up nice and tall with the leg crossed. And then just slowly lift and lower the knee, right? And again, with the focus, what's happening right up here at the hip socket. So you might take your hand up and just kind of feel, oh, what's happening there? If you close your eyes, go inside the sensation of movement in that hip socket as opposed to what's happening in your leg or in your knee or in your back. But what's happening in that hip socket? What's available? Does it feel smooth and even? Does it feel a little clunky? Does it feel a little sticky? And again, just noticing for yourself if this is a hip that you've had a problem with or you've had it replaced, does it move differently than the other one? And then just relaxing that, uncrossing that ankle, both feet on the floor, hands on your thighs, eyes closed, breathing in, breathing out. Notice your hips right now. Letting your eyes open. So quick check-in for that movement. What did you notice on your right side versus your left side? Was there a difference? Yeah. Was it surprising? No. Everybody's like, no, I know this. Yeah. This kind of stuff we do generally know, right? So when you're doing these kinds of movements, if you're a little more restricted on one side, pay attention to that. So maybe you need to spend a little longer on that side, just kind of doing those kinds of movements. Or maybe not, maybe you need to be not as aggressive, excuse me, on that side, especially if you're bumping up against pain, right? So if I go, oh, you know, this feels okay, but wow, this really starts to hurt a lot. So I'm going to work within the limits of that pain. Maybe to make sure I don't get that pain, I just give a little support with my hands so that I go, oh, okay, this is totally pain-free, but this feels great. And this is just reminding me, it's reminding my body, it's reminding my brain that there are ways to move my body without pain. Because that's the pain robs us of our ability to move, right? Pain makes that movement smaller and smaller and smaller. And so it becomes our perception that we can't move beyond this. So we're limited often. We get some pain and we start to restrict it and we get to here and then we start to operate only in this little teeny space. And we never explore anything else. And then that space gets smaller and smaller because, you know, I don't want to even get close to the edge of that pain because it's so painful. So this is just a way for us to go, oh, okay, I can move just a little bit here. Isn't that amazing? I can do this. Isn't that great? I can do this. So celebrating what I can do as opposed to what I can't do. So any other questions or comments about that movement for the legs? Good. All right. So one more little movement for this part of the pelvis where the leg bones come in, and that's that forward and backward, right? So I was saying that this is like the main movement, right? Is lifting. But we're sitting in a chair, so we're not going to necessarily do that. We're going to bring the torso toward the leg. It's the same move. It's the same shape, right? So we're going to bring the feet a little bit wider than the hips again. Come right up to the front edge of your chair. So your feet are flat on the floor. I'm going to have you spread your toes out and place them down so you have like good purchase on the floor with your toes. And then thinking about your spine, see how beautiful your spine is, right? We're going to keep the spine like that as we just kind of come forward and back. So you can press your hands into your thighs to help yourself come back up. You can use your hands, you can use the muscles of your shoulders. Now with your feet wide, this does a couple of things. It makes that rotation of the leg bones a little bit easier because the more narrow stance when you come forward, the harder that is in the hip socket. With the feet wide, it makes it a little bit easier. And then it also accommodates if you have a little more anatomy in the front of your body, right? When you come forward. There you go. You want to make room for the anatomy. That's all. There. So you're able to come forward and back. So right now we're doing the equivalent of lifting the leg toward the body, right? We're just moving the body toward the leg. So again, class today is really about experiencing and being inside the joint. So what's happening? If you close your eyes, go inside the sensation of your hips where your leg bones come in. What does that feel like? Does it feel the same from side to side? Does it feel different on one side or the other? Now, you might be saying, well, but my back muscles are like too tight and I can't come forward, so I really can't feel what's happening in my hips. So go beyond the back muscles. If you're moving to a spot where your back muscles are complaining, don't go as far forward because we're trying to quiet down whatever's the noisiest here and just get to that sensation of moving in the joint, right? And you're breathing in and out. I know you are. You all are professional breathers. You've been doing it a long time. So you're inhaling and exhaling. Good. And then coming back up to sort of a seated position, letting your hands rest on your lap, closing your eyes again. Noticing what you feel in there. So where the legs come into the hips. And then see if you can visualize your hip bones on either side, right? Those elephant ears, if you will, that's called the ilium. That's the medical term for it, the ilium. You have your right ilium, left ilium. So your hip bone on the right and your hip bone on the left. And then breathing in and out. You can let your eyes gently open. Okay. All right. And what did you notice about that movement? Oh, we're going to have to put watches in that naughty category, right? What did you notice about that movement forward and back? Easier for you. Yep. Smoother. Yep. The sitting bones. Yeah. And we've been really focusing on them, right? Usually we're distracting ourselves with all kinds of other things going on, but yeah, it's like super aware. Are you super aware of the pelvis, right? Super aware of the hip bones. What else? Anything else? So were you able to kind of get a sense of what the structure was doing in there as we were moving? Isn't that fascinating? Yeah, it kind of keeps the mind interested in what's going on in the body, right? When we know what's in there. Because when I don't know, when from here to here is just a black box, I don't know what's going on in there. That's why I go to the doctor. They do whatever and take pictures and tell me what's happening. But when I feel it, when I can feel how my body's moving, right? So we're flexing and extending the spine, like doing this movement. What happens now when you do this movement? Everybody do a little bit of flexion and extension. Does that feel easier, smoother, freer? Does it feel more normal and natural? Like, wow, yeah, of course I can do this. You can feel your sitting bones. Can you feel where your sacrum articulates in the hip bones there? Can you feel that? Slight movement there. You got little SI joints, sacroiliac joints on either side. There's some movement in the SI joints. And then up into your T-spine, right? You can feel your T-spine kind of moving even though your ribs are there. And what's happening with your neck? Oh, your neck is kind of free now too, right? So the neck is kind of moving a little bit. You feel like you're taller. Yeah. Awesome. Good. So this is, again, these are all kind of variations on those 6 movements of the spine, right? So I think oftentimes when we learn an exercise or we learn a movement or a series of movements, we get very caught up in the technical part of it, right? I got to move forward and backward 6 times, and then I got to move side to side 10 times, and then I got to twist 5 times, or whatever it is. And then we forget that this is all very fluid and rotational, right? It's all very fluid and rotational. So having your sitting bones, just to kind of pull this all together now, having your sitting bones on the chair. So do you remember? Oh, you don't have to remember. You can look. So your sitting bones, it's the bottom of your ilium on the right and your ilium on the left. You can take your hands underneath and you can feel that, right? You can feel the little bony part. Okay, so you want to make sure you can feel the sitting bones on the chair. And now we're going to do something that's sort of like a gyro, right? So it's for the whole spine. So you're just going to kind of turn on the sitting bones. Oh, this is like a hula hoop, isn't it? Yeah. So we'll call it the hula hoop, right? So as you're doing the hula hoop, get your whole spine in there, right? So don't just go like this on your sitting bones. Get the whole spine. What if you could keep your head level with your pubis, right? So pubis is right there, head is right here, right? And you're moving everything in between your belly dancing. Yeah. So can you feel that kind of movement? Yeah. Are you able to breathe as you're doing this? Yeah. And what about if you go the other way? Doesn't feel natural. Feels weird, right? Not as smooth. Go back to your fun way, your favorite way, rather. Too late for that? And then go the opposite way again. Good. And then coming back to sort of that stillness, right? So again, that movement that we just did, that kind of gyro movement that we just did, that incorporates all 6 movements of the spine in a little different way, right? So there's lots of different ways to do that. Okay, so close your eyes again. Sit comfortably. Notice where your feet are in contact with the floor. And if your feet are not in contact with the floor, if you're a little bit smaller and your feet are kind of hovering over the floor, that's okay too. Notice where your sitting bones are on the chair. So unless you've learned how to levitate, your sitting bones are definitely still on the chair. That's level 2. So notice your sitting bones on the chair. Notice your spine. And again, just breathing in and breathing out. Where does your attention immediately go? So just pay attention to where your awareness goes when you breathe in and out. And coming back to that visualization of your hip bones, the right hip bone and the left hip bone. The sacrum as it sits between the left and right hip bone. The lumbar spine above that. Your thoracic or T-spine where your ribs are connected. Up into your neck or your cervical spine. And again, very subtle movement as you breathe in and out. Can you feel your spine expanding slightly on the inhalations and contracting slightly on the exhalations? As you breathe in, can you feel your spine expand and lengthen? And as you breathe out, can you feel your spine gently compress and relax? Breathing in, the spine lengthens. Breathing out, the spine relaxes. And are you aware of that expansion and contraction in some parts of your spine more than others? And in the parts where you don't feel a lot of expansion and contraction, what would it take to feel more there? What would it take to create more space in that part of your body? Is it a relaxing of muscles in your hands or fingers, arms or shoulders? Or is it a change in how you think about your spine? As you breathe in, feel your spine expand, and as you breathe out, feel a gentle contraction in the spine. As you breathe in, feel your body get a little taller, and as you breathe out, relax into that increase in height. Thinking about how your spine moves as you inhale and exhale. Can you feel the slight flexion and extension at your spine as you breathe in and out? And then breathing in more to the right side. Imagine filling the right side of your body more than the left side. Can you feel the right side of your spine expanding and the left side of your spine gently contracting? And then breathing into the left side of your spine more than the right. As you inhale, can you feel the left side of your spine expanding and the right side of your spine gently contracting? So it's like a little mini side bend, and you're doing the movement just with the breath. You're not engaging any muscles. You're just letting the breath create that side bending movement. So breathing into the right side, feel it expand. Breathing into the left side, feel it expand. And then going back to breathing in and out equally and evenly in both sides. Taking one more nice full deep breath in. Let it out with a sigh. Ah. And then take a moment, if you want, bring your hands together. Just let's take a moment in appreciation of our spines, our pelvises, how they play together. And then if you'd like, you can just open your eyes and we'll just sort of greet all these other wonderful people in the room today. Awesome. Great. Have a great rest of your day. Yes.